Liebe Zuschauer, herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Folge von Im Auge des Bruders mit Scott Ritter auf unserem YouTube-Kanal Gegenpol. Mein Name ist Monique Stegemann und für mich ist es heute eine besondere Folge. Es ist meine letzte, die ich für Gegenpol moderieren werde. Mehr dazu erzähle ich euch nach dem Interview. Im Gespräch mit Scott Ritter geht es heute um folgende Themen. Überragender Wahlsieg des russischen Präsidenten Wladimir Putin. Was sagen die internationalen Reaktionen aus über die geopolitische Realität? Die russischen Kriegsziele in der Ukraine. Wie realistisch ist die Etablierung eines Kordons sanitär, einer entmilitarisierten Pufferzone? Wie steht es um die Demokratie in den Vereinigten Staaten? Hillary Clinton beschwört ein neues Russia-Gate im Falle eines Wahlsieges von Donald Trump. Und die neue britische Laserkanone Dragonfire. Welchen Nutzen hat so eine Waffe auf dem realen Schlachtfeld? Die Präsidentschaftswahl hat dem russischen Präsidenten Wladimir Putin einen erdrutschartigen Sieg eingebracht. Mit über 87% der Stimmen lag Putin sogar deutlich über den Wahlprognosen. Die Wahlbeteiligung hat bei etwa 74% gelegen. Scott, kann man den Sieg Putins auch als Zustimmung der russischen Bevölkerung zur Art und Weise des militärischen Vorgehens in der Ukraine werten? Schließlich waren Putins Hauptherausforderer die Kommunistische Partei der Russischen Föderation und die Liberaldemokratische Partei Befürworter einer deutlich härteren Gangart gegen Kiew bis hin zu nuklearen Optionen. Welche Auswirkungen wird der überwältigende Wahlsieg Putins auf den Ukraine-Krieg haben?
I think we need to separate the election from the war. This election wasn't about the war at all. This election was about Russia and the future of Russia. The war is over. The war's won. I mean, I know Europe hasn't wrapped its head around that. The United States hasn't wrapped its head around that. But check the battlefield. The Ukrainian army isn't winning, and they're not going to win. This election was about where Russia is going to be going in the next 6 years, and the number to focus on isn't the 88%. If you want to talk about the war in Ukraine, talk about the 88%, because that says, you know, we support Putin, we support this man. But the most important number is the 74%. Some sources have that number up as high as 77%. That's the percentage of the eligible electorate who participated in the election. And this is the most significant number, because this is a number of people who said, we believe in Russia. We believe in the state. We believe in how Russia has been manifested. We believe in the future of Russia. And, you know, normally nations at war don't have that high level of, you can support a man, but you may not support the situation. This is a vote of optimism. This is a vote that says, we like the direction we're heading. We like who we are. And that's the important part, because Vladimir Putin is 71 years old, and he just won a 6-year term of re-election. When this election's finished, he'll be 77. And at that point in time, I mean, it doesn't matter how strong Vladimir Putin is today and how capable he is today. It's 77. When you add 6, we're getting to 83. And I know that Vladimir Putin is a remarkable human specimen, but 83 is 83, 77 is 77. And the Russians don't want to, you know, they know their history, and they remember Brezhnev. They remember Andropov. They remember Chernyenko. They know what happens when you put yourself in a situation where all you have is geriatrics who can govern. It's sort of like looking at the United States, where we've put ourselves into a corner where all we have is old men who, you know, are only going to get older and more frail going forward. Russia's not going to repeat that mistake, and so the next 6 years is going to be about 6 years of transition, not transformation. Putin has already transformed Russia out of the decade of the 1990s into what Russia is today. The next 6 years is going to be about the transition into what comes after Putin. And the Russian people sent a signal that this is what they want. They believe in the Russian state as much as they believe in the man, Vladimir Putin. And I think that's what this war is going to be over. this election isn't about the war because this war is going to be over this year. This election is about the next 6 years, and that's what people should be focusing on.
Die internationalen Reaktionen auf Putins Wahlsieg lesen sich wie das Drehbuch der neuen geopolitischen Realität. Während der globale Osten und Süden dem russischen Präsidenten zu seinem Sieg gratulieren, ob nun China, Iran, die arabischen Staaten, Indien oder zahlreiche afrikanische und lateinamerikanische Staaten, verweigert der Westen eine Anerkennung des Wahlergebnisses. Aus den NATO-Staaten tönt, die Wahlen seien weder frei noch demokratisch gewesen. Der ukrainische Präsident Wladimir Selenskyj spricht von einer simulierten Wahl. Die stellvertretende Sprecherin der Bundesregierung, Christiane Hoffmann, formulierte, es gibt keine Meinungsfreiheit in Russland. Russland, das hat ja der Bundeskanzler auch bereits gesagt, ist heute eine Diktatur und wird von Wladimir Putin autoritär beherrscht. Was sagst du zu diesen Wortmeldungen aus dem Westen, Scott? Und wie bewertest du die global geteilten Reaktionen? Zeigt sich daran die internationale Isolation Russlands und Putins?
I think it shows the international isolation of the West, the intellectual isolation of the West. I've been to Russia twice in the last year, and I hope to be going to Russia again. The Russia I saw was not a Russia ruled by an autocrat or a dictator, was not a nation of people incapable of free speech, free thought, free will, just the opposite. It was a thriving, vibrant society that, I think people have to understand that free speech is not only registered when you speak in opposition. Somehow we think that free speech only counts when you're opposed to something. You see, he's practicing free speech. He's against something the government's doing. What happens when you freely associate with the government? When you say, we sort of like what's happening to Russia. We believe in Russia. The West has been trying to put down Russia for the past quarter century, even more, since the end of the Soviet Union. Ask Chancellor Scholz to be honest and go into the archives of the German intelligence service and pull out the documentation of how the German government has been working with the United States and other governments to undermine Russia, to overthrow Vladimir Putin, to interfere in the elections and the sovereign decisions of a sovereign state. You see, the Germans aren't for the German government's not about democracy in Russia. Democracy exists in Russia. There was a freer, fairer election in Russia this past week than there has ever been in Germany or the United States in recent history. If the Germans don't understand that the United States, the CIA is actively involved in undermining your democratic processes by buying various candidates, then you're incapable of comprehending, of thinking. The Russians are in an ideological war with the West, not because Russia seeks this war, but because the West has imposed this war on Russia. The CIA has been in the business of buying Russian opposition candidates since early 2000s. Let's go back. The CIA was involved in the buying of the Yeltsin re-election in 1996. So the idea that the West is criticizing or condemning the Russian elections is it's just proof of the intellectual isolation of the West, or let's be further, the intellectual retardation of the West. We live in a new world. It's a world that's going to be defined by multipolarity, and Russia's at the cutting edge of this multipolar world, a leader of this multipolar world. And so when you say the divide, what we're talking about is a divide between that part of the world that understands what the future is going to look like and the role that Russia is going to play in that future, and a part of the world that resists that future and resents Russia's role. You can't believe anything that comes out of the West when it comes to the Russian election.
Während in Russland die Wahlen stattgefunden haben, versuchten ukrainische Einheiten offenbar auch mit Unterstützung der sogenannten Fremdenlegion, sprich ausländischen Söldnern, in das Territorium der Russischen Föderation einzudringen. Die Angriffe wurden zurückgeschlagen. Sie dienen aber nun der russischen Regierung, ihre militärischen Forderungen in aller Deutlichkeit zu wiederholen. So sprach der russische Präsident Putin von der Notwendigkeit zur Etablierung eines Cordon sanitaire, einer entmilitarisierten Pufferzone, die so breit sein müsse, dass die Ukraine nicht länger Russland gefährden könne. Was sagst du zu diesen Plänen, Scott? Ist dieses Kriegsziel realisierbar für Russland? Und was wäre dafür notwendig, um so eine Cordon sanitaire dauerhaft abzusichern?
Well, I'm not here to one, pretend that I know what Russian goals and objectives are, and two, I'm not here to provide advice to the Russian government. They're fully capable of assessing their security, realities and the policies necessary to achieve what their goals and objectives are. But if we just take a look at what a cordon sanitaire is, it's basically creating a buffer zone inside Ukraine along the border with the Russian Federation, both the old delineation of it and the modern delineation of it, Crimea and the 4 new territories. The United States is providing Ukraine with long-range weapons. Germany is talking about providing Ukraine. I mean, think about it. A cordon sanitaire is a buffer zone that means that the longest range weapon in the possession of the Ukrainian government cannot reach Russian territory if fired from within territory where these weapons are allowed to operate. So if you take a look at the map and then you extend a range line based upon the ranges of the weapons that the United States and Europe has provided, it means there will not be a Ukraine. A cordon sanitaire means that there will be no Ukraine. Ukraine is finished as a sovereign state. До свидания, Ukraine. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye. And don't blame Russia. Blame the West. You killed Ukraine. You're the one responsible. You wanted these weapons. You wanted to kill Russians. You wanted to allow them to bombard Russian cities. You created this problem. Russia's come up with the solution. The solution is there will be no Ukraine. And that's the reality. Blame the West.
In den politischen und medialen Diskussionen im Westen findet sich vermehrt die Überlegung von Friedensverhandlungen zur Beilegung des Ukraine-Kriegs. So plant die EU gemeinsam mit der Schweiz eine Friedenskonferenz in der Schweiz durchzuführen. Das Absurde daran, nach wie vor wird daran festgehalten, eine solche Konferenz ohne russische Beteiligung durchzuführen. Diesen Überlegungen hat nun die Volksrepublik China eine deutliche Absage erteilt. Der Sprecher des chinesischen Außenministeriums Wang Wenbin machte deutlich, dass China an einem solchen Treffen nicht partizipieren werde. Die Position Pekings sei, dass der Konflikt nur durch einen direkten Dialog Russlands mit der Ukraine gelöst werden könne. Was sagst du, Scott, generell zu den Plänen von Friedenskonferenzen ohne Russland dazu einzuladen? Und welche internationale Rolle spielt die Volksrepublik China? Welcher Wandel hat sich vollzogen, auch innerhalb eines Jahres, als China noch bei der Konferenz in der saudischen Hauptstadt Riyadh teilgenommen hat?
Well, first of all, the Chinese were never 100% on board with the Russian decision to go into Ukraine. While they consider themselves strategic partners of Russia and have behaved accordingly, meaning that they have not participated in economic sanctions. Indeed, China has opened up its economy, is providing a literal lifeline for Russia so that Russia would be able to redirect economic activity that otherwise would have been constrained by Western sanctions. And it has allowed the Russian economy to emerge stronger because of sanctions. This is in large part because of the willingness of China to continue to work with Russia. But the Westphalian principles of non-intervention that are the hallmark of China's foreign policy were insulted by the Russian decision to go into Ukraine. But the Chinese, since that time, have seen what the Russians know, and that is that the Western powers aren't there to promote Westphalian principles or to promote, the rule of law. They're there to promote a rules-based international order that's premised upon American unilateralism, and that if left to their own devices, China will go the path of Russia, that China will find that the United States and the West will use, for instance, the issue of Taiwan to weaken and undermine China the way that the West used the issue of Ukraine to weaken and undermine Russia. And now that they've come face to face with this reality, I think the Chinese have articulated, a far greater level of support for what Russia's doing in Ukraine, and recognizes that everything done by the West in the name of peace is actually designed to weaken Russia. I mean, this isn't a peace conference. This is an emergency conference to do damage control. Because according to Zelensky, peace can only be achieved if Russia is willing to return to the 1991 borders, to surrender its leadership to The Hague and other unrealistic, fanciful goals and objectives. I think China recognizes that peace will only come when Russia wins this war. That the only path to peace is a Russian victory. And again, don't blame Russia. The Russian president has indicated that he's been willing all along to negotiate a genuine peace based upon reality. If the world was interested in peace, there was the Istanbul communique of March 2022, April 2022, that would have brought an instant end to this war, and it would have left Ukraine largely intact and with millions of people unaffected the way they are today by this conflict. It was the West that turned its back on the concept of peace then. And now the West, by embracing Zelensky's unrealistic 10-point plan for peace, is guaranteeing that the conflict will go on. This war ends only in one way. That's the unconditional surrender of Ukraine to Russia. And that's just a reality. You can meet in Switzerland, you can meet anywhere. You can meet in Timbuktu. You can go to Mars and meet. You can go anywhere you want to meet and talk about this. It doesn't matter. The only partner that's going to make a decision about how this conflict ends is Russia, and the West doesn't want to be partners with Russia. So Russia will solve it itself. This war ends when Ukraine surrenders to Russia.
Lass uns noch einmal auf das Thema Demokratie zu sprechen kommen. Während der Westen und auch die Vereinigten Staaten es sich zur Aufgabe gemacht haben, Russland als Autokratie oder gar als Diktatur zu brandmarken, formulierte der russische Präsident Putin jüngst, die US-Politik sei mehr eine Katastrophe als eine Demokratie. Putin sagte wörtlich, ich zitiere, es ist für jeden offensichtlich, dass das amerikanische politische System nicht den Anspruch erheben kann, in irgendeinem Sinne des Wortes demokratisch zu sein. Was sagst du als US-Bürger zu Putins Einschätzung? Sind die USA eine funktionierende Demokratie?
I think on the national level, Vladimir Putin has an extraordinarily valid point. There's two things to a democracy. One is choice. People talk about that choice to vote who you want for. But the most important thing about it, and the West tends to focus on that. So they look at Russia and they say, there may have been four candidates, but there was really only one choice, Vladimir Putin. He was the only realistic candidate out there. Therefore, Russia is not a democracy. I look at the United States and I say, there's only two choices. And neither one's very good. Joe Biden, the incumbent, or Donald Trump. Nobody else can get into the scene. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has tried. You can't get a third-party candidate in there. You're either with the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. And the American people have no choice who those candidates are. People need to understand there's a difference between going to the poll in November and voting freely and having a say who's going to be on the ballot. We don't have a say who's going to be on the ballot. The party systems have a say who's going to be on the ballot. So we can't talk about, democracy because there is no choice. There literally is no choice. We get to choose between two that are the same because either way the policy is going to be same. Tell me how Donald Trump's policies fundamentally deviated from the policies of either Barack Obama before him or Joe Biden after. They didn't. There's little nuance changes, there's little gimmick changes, but at the end of the day, America is America. It's run by an establishment that keeps going, and we don't get to vote for the establishment. We just get to vote for the figurehead at the head of the establishment. So yeah, to call America a democracy is a joke. And the other thing is, look at 2020 election was an election where the American public was riled up. We were going to participate, 66%. And that was like high. That's like, oh my God, look how many Americans participated. Russia just had an election where the low figure is 74. I think a figure that's coming in now is closer to 77% participation. That's the vote that counts. The people went to the polls. You know, if Russia wasn't a democracy, if the people thought that, you know, Putin was just this figurehead speech, why would they go and participate? I mean, you'd see the rejection of this by the people saying, I don't want to participate in this process. I don't agree with this process. I don't support this process. The supporters of Alexei Navalny were encouraging that. Go in, disrupt, you know, either spoil the ballots or just don't participate. Because a low level of participation shows that the people don't believe in the system. They don't believe in the process. But the Russian people said, we believe in this process, even though it only had one genuine figure. They supported that figure and they understood. They know why Alexei Navalny's name wasn't on the ballot. It's not because Russia kept him off the ballot. It's because he kept himself off the ballot by being a CIA asset. How can you have a viable opposition in Russia? Why does the West say, where is the opposition? Well, the opposition doesn't exist because you tried to create it to destroy Russia. You created Alexei Navalny, you created Boris Nemtsov, you created, you know, Garry Kasparov and all these people. They're not Russian patriots. These aren't people who are trying to do good things for Russia. These are Western assets trying to destroy Russia from within. And the Russian government has every right to say, we don't want them. We don't want them on the ballot. The West doesn't get to determine who's on a Russian ballot. The Russian people get to determine who's on a Russian ballot. And Vladimir Putin's name was on the ballot, and 88% of the people who voted said, that's the guy we want. But the bigger number is the 74 to 77% who said, that's what we believe in. Right now, this election that's coming up, there's a chance the turnout's going to be very low because people have just stopped believing in America. They stop believing in the government. They don't support it anymore. They don't understand how it helps them, you know, what their role in it. But I will push back a little bit on Vladimir Putin about to say American democracy is dead in America. At the local level, American democracy flourishes. You know, we have very vibrant local elections where the people get involved, where the people have a say who's on the ballot. So when they go on the voting booth and they look at the name there, they say, yeah, I know that person. I support this person. So American democracy works very well at the local level. And, you know, but it's American democracy. Look, I don't criticize the Russians because they have presidentially appointed governors and mayors. You know, that's, you know, in America, we elect our governors, we elect our mayors. In Russia, they're appointed by the president. That's just the Russian system. And that's the way Russia works. So I don't criticize Russia and say, well, you're undemocratic because your mayors and your governors are appointed by the president. I respect the Russian system. It's what works for Russia. And I would just ask people to respect the American system as well. We have a system that isn't working for us right now at the national level. But hopefully we can fix it. It's our problem that we need to fix. But you know, I think it's wrong to compare American democracy with Russian democracy or anybody else because systems are different. Systems are derived from the unique characteristics of the individual nations. And so it's impossible to make a direct comparison between the two.
Obwohl Russland deutlich gemacht hat, dass es sich niemals in die US-Wahlen einmischen würde, scheint das US-Establishment bereits zu versuchen, ein neues Russiagate zu erfinden. Sollte es tatsächlich zu einem Wahlsieg von Donald Trump kommen, ist ein neuer medialer Aufschrei bereits in Planung. So schrieb Hillary Clinton kürzlich auf X, es wird jeden Tag klarer, eine Stimme für Trump ist eine Stimme für Team Putin. Scott, was sagst du zu diesen Aussagen von Hillary Clinton? Gibt es diese Verbindung zwischen Trump und Putin?
I mean, look, Hillary Clinton and her campaign in the Democratic Party manufactured the Russiagate controversies of the 2016 election. We know that today. We know that nothing she said was true, nothing. And so I think we have to treat anything that comes out of Hillary Clinton in that light. This isn't responsible political discourse on her part. It's misinformation. It's it's absurd in the extreme. So I think I prefer we don't spend too much time talking about a woman who no longer factors on the American political spectrum. I mean, I can say this because it's not a secret. I just had lunch with Ambassador Anatoly Antonov, who's the Russian ambassador to the United States, and we talked about the political scene in the United States, and he is reticent about speaking about individual candidates because he doesn't want to be accused of interfering in the American election. But he has a word that he uses, and it's a very important word for him, and by extension for the Russian foreign ministry and the Russian government, and that's predictability. One of the essential elements of statehood is predictability. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with what your partner or adversary is promoting, but you need to be able to look at it, and there has to be an element of predictability to it so that you can formulate strategies and plans to deal with that posture. Donald Trump is the least predictable person out there. So the notion that the Russians are going to be bending over backwards to promote the candidacy of a man who is inherently unpredictable is just stupid. It means you don't understand Russia. On the other hand, Joe Biden is a very predictable person. His policies are not good for Russia, but at least Russia knows what his policies are. There's a predictable trajectory of these policies. And so Russia can create counter policies that are effective. When you can predict what your opponent or adversary is going to do, you can come up with counters to it that are effective because of the predictability. But Donald Trump is chaos, unpredictable. This isn't the words of Antonov. These are my words. I'm just projecting his desire for predictability, and I think that it's absolutely insane to think that Russia would desire an unpredictable candidate. Look, they know what happened. Now, people, remember the fiction, that Donald Trump. Why can't we just be friends with Russia? That was sort of one of his big themes in 2016. What kind of friend was he? Yeah, he had a meeting with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. But what happened to that meeting? Trump came for a photo op. The Russians came for substance. Trump got his photo op, but the Russians didn't get substance. They walked away from that meeting very disappointed because they realized that this man is as shallow as he is chaotic. Trump finished his presidency bragging about he was the strongest president against Russia in American history, sanctioning this, sanctioning that, supplying Ukraine with weapons. I mean, so what does Russia want from this guy? I mean, what do they expect from this guy? They don't know because he's unpredictable. So I think anybody who's out there saying that a vote for Trump is a vote for Team Putin, you just underscore that you are as ignorant as the day is long and you don't know anything about how the Russian government works and what the Russian government desires.
Abschließend würden wir gerne noch dein Fachwissen als Militärexperte und ehemaligen Waffeninspekteur der Vereinten Nationen abrufen. Anfang März führte das Vereinigte Königreich nach eigenen Angaben erfolgreiche Tests einer Laserkanone mit dem Namen Dragonfire, zu Deutsch Drachenfeuer, durch. Das britische Militär spricht von einem Gamechanger, einen entscheidenden Durchbruch in der Waffentechnologie, insbesondere in der Luftabwehr. Mit dem Dragonfire soll es möglich sein, mittels eines Laserstrahls ein feindliches Flugobjekt abzuschießen. In der westlichen Presse wird gelobt, dass statt Millionen für Raketen auszugeben, ein Schuss des Dragonfire nur 13 US-Dollar koste. Wie schätzt du das Potenzial dieser Waffe ein, Scott? Ist das wirklich so ein Durchbruch in der Luftabwehr? Und ist der Westen da Russland, China und anderen einen Schritt voraus?
I don't believe in miracle weapons. And I mean, nations have been studying the viability and efficacy of laser-based weapons for decades. Star Wars, Ronald Reagan's anti-missile shield was in large part based upon the dream of a laser weapon. The United States has been, putting, modified 747s up in the air with lasers, and Russia has been working on lasers, and China's been working on lasers, and now apparently Great Britain has created this laser weapon. It's all theory. There's no such thing as a miracle weapon. For every advance in weaponry, there's a counter. What we do know is that we can make weapons more lethal. We can make that. We can make weapons, more capable. We've seen that in advances in ballistic missile technology with guidance and control, et cetera. And if this weapon works as the British claimed it does, then we see an advancement in lethality and accuracy. But every weapon has an Achilles heel, and the Russians will find that Achilles heel and they'll target that Achilles heel. And that's the way war works. You put a weapon on the battlefield, then the enemy comes up with a counter to that weapon. Then you need to come up to a counter to that counter, and on we go. So, congratulations, Great Britain. You're wonderful. Now go put your army in a soccer stadium and count the empty seats, because you're still pathetic as a military.
Könntest du da bitte ins Detail gehen, Scott? Wie genau funktioniert eine Laserkanone wie Dragonfire? Kann man sich das wie das Blasterfeuer bei Star Wars vorstellen? Ist das die Zukunft der Militärtechnik, die irgendwann Projektilwaffen ablösen kann?
Well, I mean, I need to know more about the British test. They put out, things. They show a test object that has obviously had a laser drill through it. Was that a test object in motion, or was that a test object that was just up there for it to hit? Can this laser track a projectile moving at high speed, maneuvering? See, I think we're way early in this thing. I think there's a lot of projection of capacity based upon potential that hasn't yet manifested itself. The biggest problem with lasers is, power source and how to get the beam to focus enough to be an effective weapon to penetrate. But here's another question. Okay, let's say they can shoot what if I just coat my weapon with a mirror-like surface, a reflective surface? Then the laser no longer works, does it? Remember, the laser is a power source. So as you emit your weapon, you're also revealing your location. I don't imagine any weapon, especially one that's not very mobile, because lasers require a lot of power that's going to be difficult to make mobile. So a stationary weapon that's basically saying, I'm here, is begging to be destroyed as opposed to destroy. I just don't believe in miracle weapons. I'm the kind of guy that spent my life figuring out how to overcome enemy capabilities and kill them. There's a lot of people out there today that serve in the role that I served in, very clever people. And I would feel comfortable betting that this weapon is not as good as the British say it is. And if they try to deploy it the way they, to do what they want, you'll find that it's going to be a weapon that has zero survivability on a modern battlefield.
Meine lieben Zuschauer, für mich ist es an der Zeit, Abschied zu nehmen von dem Format im Auge des Bruders mit Scott, Ritter und Gegenpol. Jede Reise endet einmal und so auch meine als Moderatorin hier auf diesem Kanal. Aber keine Sorge, mit meinem Abschied von Gegenpol enden nicht die Interviews mit Scott Ritter. Nach einer kurzen Osterpause steht Scott wieder Rede und Antwort hierbei im Auge des Bruders auf Gegenpol. Es war mir eine große Freude, für euch zu moderieren. Bleibt kritisch, bleibt offen und bleibt vor allen Dingen euch selbst treu. Und vielleicht seht ihr mich irgendwann wieder auf einer alternativen Plattform. Ich sage Tschüss, eure Monique.